to what this panel is going to be talking about. So we're going to jump right in and talk about some of the infusion programs and places that SBIR companies might go with what they have developed. So I'd like to welcome back Therese Griebel, Deputy Associate Administrator for Programs in NASA's Space Technology Mission Directorate, and her panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Art. Good morning. So this panel is actually going to be very valuable, I think, for a lot of the people who are investing or are actively pursuing or already in SBIR activities right now. So I'm just going to quickly introduce people, and we decided not to do bios because we believe those kind of drag on. So I'm going to save a few minutes for more actual content. Stephen Ord is going to be representing our NASA Flight Opportunities Program. And what we're going to do in this session is each of the individuals are going to come up and talk to you for about 5 minutes each on what their program does, how it works, what are the intricacies, and then we're going to take questions. So we expect to be talking for about 22 minutes, and then we'll have questions for another 22 minutes. So hopefully you'll find this to be very helpful for navigating what NASA can do for you and what we can do with you in order to advance your technologies to meet national and NASA needs. So as I said, Stephen Ord is representing Flight Opportunities, and I would tell you what that is, but that would just ruin his presentation. Anthony Calomino is the Deputy Program Manager for NASA's Game Changing Program. And Bruce Yost is here representing our Small Spacecraft Technology Program. And Dr. LK, we just call him LK. I don't know that I've ever pronounced his last name. Kubendran, is that right? All right. I've known him for 18 months. So LK is going to talk to us about tipping point and ACOs, and those are different competitive activities that we have, and there are intricacies about each of these different things. They all have different pros, different cons, and different objectives, and so it's worthwhile to understand from them and then maybe interact with them later to find out a little more details. So with that, we're going to start with Stephen Ord.
So if I can have the slides, let's see if mine comes up. No? Yeah, looks like it. Oh, there we go. All right. So my name is Stephen Ord. I'm the Technology Manager for the Flight Opportunities Program, and I have to say I've known LK for 4 years now. I can now find him in the phone book. So Therese, you got something to look forward to there. So I'm just going to tell you about our program because not all of you may know about the Flight Opportunities Program. Basically, what we do is we provide a flight testing environment for folks to test us in the space environment. So if you're developing space technologies and you need to demonstrate that technology in space so that you can finally find out whether or not that works or find out what doesn't work, a lot of times that happens in our program, then you can possibly utilize our program. So in these relevant environments, I have a list up here, but it's not just zero or microgravity. There's other types of environments. We have high altitude balloons that folks fly on that, and we don't own these balloons, but people fly on high altitude balloons in our program. They might fly at 100,000 feet. Maybe they're testing a solar instrument or something like that. So there's lots of different vehicles that are possible within our program that provide different environments. I just want to note, we're really in the suborbital space arena. We're not in the orbital. For orbital, there's other programs and things that do that, and you might hear more about that later. And we're also not in the ground testing, so we're in the flight testing part. Our program doesn't fund development, but we do fund the flight activities. So moving on, just to give you a quick slide here, just a few seconds. These are some of the vehicles that people choose on their own to fly within the Flight Opportunities Program. So we don't tell people which vehicle to fly on. You get to go out and choose your own. We do have some minimum requirements that they have to meet. But you can see there's zero-G, there's balloon, even Blue Origin is flying. People are getting 3 minutes of zero gravity out of that. So lots of interesting opportunities there. The question of what does it make, what kind of qualifications do people have to come to our program? Do you qualify? If you're here in this SBIR conference, you're probably likely qualified. You're developing space technologies. If you're doing that and the technologies are in these general areas, chances are you probably do qualify. We do have a solicitation that comes out. Our next solicitation will be in the first quarter of calendar year 2019. I can't tell you what month it's going to be in, but look for it. And in that solicitation, you'll see what we're asking for. You'll see the qualifications for folks, and like I said, most of you here would probably qualify for what we're doing. My last slide is just how do you participate. I mentioned the solicitation. That's the first thing there. It's called the Ready solicitation. That has a lot of appendices in it. There's a lot of things going on in STMD with the Ready solicitation. We're just one part of it. We're Appendix F1, and it's called Suborbital Flight Opportunities, so take a look at that when you see it. Typically, we're talking about, in the past, we have awarded up to $250K to be used towards a flight. If you're a private company, normally there's a cost matching required for that. And so that's about the scope of the cost. But with that $250K, those vehicles that I just mentioned, people are flying on. So that is within the realm of possibility there. We also give $50K for other costs for folks to use for sometimes grad student labor, travel, other things like that. That helps our researchers. In the past, we've done that. This last solicitation we had done, that was $25K. As I mentioned, first quarter of 2019 is the next opportunity. You know, if you want to get in touch with us, there's multiple ways. We have a booth down the hall. Come and talk to us. And the time to talk to us, it's important. Talk to me now. Once we have a solicitation on the street, I can't talk to you. So talk to me now. If you have questions about eligibility or what kind of things normally are flown or whatever, we can help you. I can't give you strategies for how to win a proposal with your particular case necessarily, but I can make sure that you understand our solicitation in that. So please definitely get in touch with us, and that's all I have.
Hi, I'm Anthony Calamino. I'm the Deputy Program Manager for Game Changing Development, and this is actually one of the programs inside of STMD. I'll talk a little bit about who we are and what we do. So this slide really kind of talks to it. GCD aims really to advance exploratory capabilities, and some of the industry one-on-ones that I had yesterday, the comment that I often gave back is we are looking to take things from a TRL 3 up to a TRL 6, or nominally the 3.4 to the 5.6 range. We call that Death Valley. There's not a whole lot of, you can get things to a TRL 3 relatively quickly, maybe even a 4, but to really push that technology to a TRL 6 where you're ready to do a demonstration on mission infusion, that's a lot of investment, and it's more of a committed effort. TRL 3, for those of you who don't know it, I real quickly described it yesterday, that you've demonstrated that there's a there there. You know what your application, you know that your concept has a there there. And so, you know, the path to moving forward is pretty clear. Some of the areas that we look at is we're looking at innovative ways of changing the way that we do our business. We want to expand our ability to explore space, to do more science with our payloads that we currently have, to look and do science in deeper parts of the solar system and into space. We do a lot of that with our commercial partners. We're looking at things like unlubricated cryogenic gearing, thermal propulsion systems, nuclear thermal propulsion systems, advanced manufacturing technologies, quite a bit in that area, 3D printing. We also have some activities looking at autonomous exploration using rovers, or APUFFER, and then expanding our ability to look at collecting solar energy where we can, and also targeting or landing on destinations where we don't have a whole lot of information as we approach the planet, but need to be able to make that decision for a safe and reliable landing. So, as I said, GCD sits in the middle, and that's what this pipeline, this is actually showing a pipeline of technologies. The technologies you see to the left are what we call our low TRL, our early innovations, the TRL 1s to 3s. And when we know that we have a technology that is enabling or can change the way we can do business, and it's at a 3, that generally is pushed over into the game-changing development for the continued part of the mission infusion. So we'll pick it up. We work in the middle part, and we actually begin to look at components, subsystems, interfaces, the system design, things like that, getting things ready to get to a TRL 6. By the time they get to a TRL 6, we are already looking at what that mission application or that technology demonstration would be. We work with quite a few states across the nation. These are just a name of some of the other government agencies or companies that we work with. Many of these relationships that we have, some of them we've acquired through tipping point proposals. And once a tipping point has been awarded and meets the solicitation, very often if it's in that TRL 3 to 6 development range, we will be the program that will acquire that and manage it to its completion on its deliverables. Some of the other companies, our programs, we have many of the development programs internal, and the program managers will select individuals in industry that they know have a capability or have the promise of a capability that they need to advance their system. So quite often, if you have a technology or you have an innovative idea and we know that there's a fit or potential fit with one of our internal programs, we can make that connection or we can communicate what that technology innovation is to the program manager, and then they would make a decision within their own portfolio what fits and doesn't fit. I just want to highlight some of, I don't know why I apologize for this. It's just the eye candy that you're missing on the top. But these are our 7 focus areas for the technologies. We've kind of binned them. We're looking at technologies we develop in power and propulsion for in-space and also surface. We also have advanced communications, navigation, and high-band data rate transfers. Avionics, ECLSS and ISRU, decreasing the dependency for exploration on Earth and actually getting a stronger capability of developing some of our needs in space or reusing some of the things that we took there. The entry, descent, and landing, this is the one thing that NASA does that no other agency in the United States does, and that is target a planet like Mars, put something off the Earth, launch it off the Earth, and actually land it on the surface and do it successfully. So we have a lot of activities to keep that capability healthy for NASA. Autonomous operations, in those areas we're looking for autonomous medical operations. Again, the theme of getting away from some Earth dependency and also enhancing exploration with some of our autonomous capabilities where they can make decisions without the latency drag that would come from communicating back to Earth. Advanced materials is an area that is pretty broad in terms of the technologies in there, but a lot of them deal with 3D printing and advanced manufacturing. And then in space manufacturing and on-orbit assembly, reusing or building large structures with things that actually pack down into low volume and can be launched from Earth. So that's pretty much it. I think that we have a question and answer session, and so we can pick those up later.
So I'm Bruce Yost. In addition to working with this SBIR program in STMD, I'm also the director of the Small Spacecraft Systems Virtual Institute, which is funded both by STMD and the Science Mission Directorate jointly. And so I'm here representing the Small Spacecraft Technology Program, which I'll talk about. But I wanted to just, since I'm here, I do a shameless plug for the Institute website, which I'll talk about later. But it's this URL there at the bottom. The Institute, the charter of the Institute is to basically collect, organize, and disseminate knowledge and information of benefit to the NASA SmallSat community. And we define the NASA SmallSat community, in addition to the NASA centers and headquarters, as industry and academia. So Small Spacecraft Technology Program is another program within STMD, and its purpose is mainly to do flight demonstrations of small spacecraft technologies. You can read here, I won't go through all of this. The other thing I should point out, though, is that the SST spans a wide range of TRLs. We fund TRLs 3 all the way up to TRLs 6 and 7 when you do the flight demonstration. So it's a pretty broad footprint for small spacecraft. The other thing, in addition, the other thing that's interesting or of value to the program, other than just doing things smaller, cheaper, and faster, and you may have heard those words before, is small spacecraft enable new mission architectures which were not previously possible. So there's a lot of excitement and a lot of interest and a lot of research going on in that kind of space. The other other thing we want to do is we want to go to new destinations, of course. Sometimes small spacecraft can be used to augment existing missions and programs. So there's kind of an ancillary role that they can play. And then the other one is to support exploration as well, sustainable exploration. As I mentioned, this program is geared to take risks. They do tech demonstrations. They operate under a lower level of insight and oversight compared to some of the other more operational missions. And the program relies heavily and works a lot with in public-private partnerships, and some of which you may hear from LK in the next talk. At the bottom of this chart here is the main website for the Small Spacecraft Technology Program. So there's both are in there for your information to learn more about them. So the focus areas, the current focus areas for Small Spacecraft Technology Program are here. I will not claim that we've conquered LEO yet. There's still a lot of work to be done in LEO. There's a lot of commercial work being done in LEO right now with small sats, as you're probably aware. But the focus for the program now is looking at deep space applications of specific interest. Deep space we define as the moon and beyond. As we go forward to the moon, small spacecraft are being kind of focused to pave the way for all kinds of different technologies and applications there. Some of the things that are key to what deep space small spacecraft need to do is in-space propulsion, which has been a kind of a long-running theme for small spacecraft. We're not quite there yet in small spacecraft propulsion. Of course, attitude control is key. Communications with small spacecraft over large distances is challenging because of the power limitations. And then we also, since we want to go deep space, a lot of small spacecraft have been built with COTS components out of Heritage. And how do you use those in radiation environments is another area that we look in deep space applications. The other thing that's of big interest is distributed spacecraft missions, where you use a swarm or a group of spacecraft that act as a single agent with maybe different types of sensors on board. That's all. There's a lot of interest in research being done there, and that drives autonomy, position navigation and timing, and then the inter-spacecraft communications technologies. So the last thing, there was one chart. I had a screenshot of the website there, but that's okay. The last thing I should mention before I stop is that historically, going back maybe a decade or more, the small spacecraft kind of community was really built on SBIRs. If you look through the different companies that are doing work in small spacecraft, many of them had started out as SBIRs, not just with NASA, but also with DoD. So the two things are very compatible, and I think that's a real good success story. And I think that's all I have, so I'm done. Yeah. Sure.
Great. Morning. I know that people have trouble with my last name, and but first name also, of course. That's why actually I have a simple email address, which I always proud to get, lk@nasa.gov. That's my email address. Therefore, if you want to reach me, you can always remember my initials. Anyway, this is just to make sure that Therese can reach me. Anyway. I'm here basically, I work in STMD. My focus is to bring in external partnership and integrate them into STMD programs, not just one, but multiple programs, okay? And I would like to share with you the information very similar to what Anthony showed, like the wiggle chart, but essentially this one actually shows a little bit more. It actually shows you the beginning and ending TRL for the 9 programs we have within STMD. I just want to kind of, SBIR, for example, it says it is spanning all the way from TRL1. For some reason, it doesn't show TRL1 here. I think something is clipped here. Anyway, SBIR says that it goes from TRL1 to TRL6, but in most cases, SBIR probably stops at either 3 or 4, okay? In some cases, it may go up to 6. But you can also see that there are other programs that will go beyond, as Anthony mentioned, will go from 3 to 6 and 3 to 7 in the case of small spacecraft technology and so on. So this kind of gives you an idea regarding how we try to advance technologies, okay? The role of tipping point and ACO, which I'm going to demystify for you all, okay, is to see how do we take the technologies that were developed using SBIR program to higher level, maybe towards even commercializing them, okay? I mean, that's one of the focus of most of you here in this room, basically, okay, how do we take the technology we develop, how do we commercialize it, how do we make it into product, how do we sell it to commercial customers as well as NASA customers, okay? That's your focus. Anyway, that's why we thought, how do we take any technologies to, let's say, demonstration and beyond, okay? And there are 2 mechanisms we came up with, okay? The first one is, let's say you have a technology at a TRL of 4. That's the minimum TRL that we expect for this tipping point solicitation. What we're saying is, you have a technology, it's almost ready to tip. We call it tip because like you are ready to take it to market, but you just need some additional investment, okay? And what we're saying is, we, NASA, we are willing to co-invest with you as long as you are willing to put some skin in the game, okay? We're saying, you need to bring in 25%, we'll provide you 75%, okay? And that's the 25% contribution from you could be in kind also. And that's a question a lot of people ask me, is it really money you got to bring in, or in kind is good? Sometimes IRAD also, I mean, internal R&D, that's also allowed, as long as you're not getting compensated by other government contracts. Anyway, basically, there are more details you can get to through our websites. Just want to show you that we have started this in 2015, and then we had our first award in 2016, then 17 and 18. I do want to let you know that there is a request for information for this next tipping point, like asking the industry to provide input regarding what kind of technologies you would like to see be part of the solicitation. Okay, the RFI closes end of this month. Therefore, if you can actually look at it and then maybe say, hey, this is something that we would like to see as topics, okay? And as you see from the previous solicitation, the topics vary from time to time. Therefore, I think here you have an opportunity to actually provide input, okay? It closes on November 28th, and more than likely, we will have the next solicitation in early calendar year 2019. Okay, that's the tipping point. The ACO, let's say, I said the tipping point, you need to have the TRL at 4, minimum 4. But the ACO, we're saying, okay, you're not ready to be at 4, but I think you need some help from the government. Let's say you still need to do some testing, and then maybe you could use some expertise from NASA centers and so on. For this ACO actually offers you through what we call as non-reimbursable Space Act agreement. Even though it says non-reimbursable, actually you're getting in-kind resources from NASA. Okay, that's the key. And it really allows companies to be able to use NASA expertise, NASA facilities, free of cost. Okay, we do this one every other year. Therefore, we have done one in 15, 17, and then the 19. The ACO 19 actually is open today. I mean, it's open right now, and the preliminary proposals are due on December 5th. Therefore, if you want to look at the solicitation, I mean, I have provided the URL at the bottom. Just feel free to take a look at it. And if you feel that you can participate, go for it. Okay. It requires you to contact NASA centers. Okay, we actually, as part of the solicitation, we have provided a list of capabilities that NASA offers and also the points of contact. Therefore, you just need to look at the capabilities and then see if you think you can use some, and then go talk to the POC and then write a small white paper and then see what happens. That's all I have.
Thanks. Okay, so that was a general overview from people who've been working in these programs for quite a while about how their programs work right now. And so we're going to open up for questions. And first, though, I'm going to ask the first question, because one of the things that I'd like to be able to demonstrate is that although you don't have to be in an SBIR in order to get into any of these programs, sometimes the SBIR, people who are in SBIRs migrate into these programs very successfully. And so starting with Steve, I'd like to see if we can get one example, a fairly quick example of someone from an SBIR that has migrated into your program and what were the results.
Sure, absolutely. We have several folks that come to our program that have SBIR history, so it's definitely a good program for that. I'd like to mention there's one that actually comes to mind, though, that is a vibration isolation platform. Somebody from Control Dynamics Incorporated, small business, came up with an idea to how to isolate payloads in a vehicle from the vibrations from crew movements, shock, fans, whatever might be vibrating in a vehicle. And so they came up with a way to isolate that, and they've flown it on through our program with several different vehicles. They plan to add it as an add-on service to folks flying in the future in vehicles without even NASA involved, of course, so that's when it's commercialized. They got a grant from CASIS, the Center for Advancement of Science and Space, and so they actually flew on the ISS for increment 51 and 52 for 130 days, so they actually made it all the way through from flight opportunities onto the station. And they have an SBIR phase 1, 2, 3, and I guess a 2X on contracts with JPL to actually transition to provide isolation for a deep space optical comm mission. So they're even getting SBIR after our program. So it's not just coming in, but actually going out. There are things you can do as well. So.
Thank you. Anthony?
So my background is materials and structure, so a lot of the SBIRs that I'm familiar with are going to come from kind of that background. It's the network of knowing what capabilities out, and I think that's one of the important things is understanding where that marriage or that matchup can be made. The hypersonic inflatable decelerators, I had a company that was really good at manufacturing textile systems. They didn't know what a thermal protection system was, couldn't probably tell you how it would be put together. But we had funded them through some SBIRs and some internal funding, and they advanced from being sort of a backup plan to this entry decelerator system to being the primary now. So their capabilities are now the thing that NASA's relying on to advance us to a real system. And it's a system that other launch providers such as Lockheed Martin and other groups are beginning to look at. So they've developed a commercially viable capability. The other one is we're working with a company that was advancing high efficiency, lightweight insulators, something that NASA has a constant demand for. And out of the high-ed technology, we looked to see what other applications there are for the fire shelter in the Forest Service. And we actually ended up designing a fire shelter with this company as a collaborator in it through starting off with SBIRs, and that fire shelter's advanced to the point where they were field tested by the Forest Service, and it looks as though they're getting ready to actually maybe make a down selection where that would be their system, and that vendor would be a part of that activity. I think the thing I want to say, and I have it here in sort of thing, is you look at Velcro, Teflon, super glue, Play-Doh, Bakelite, right? They're all mistakes. And my point is that these had a certain application, they had a certain focus that they were looking for. And what happened was they actually ended up with an innovation that created a new market or solved a problem somewhere else. So when you look at your innovation not just at the application in a sort of targeted, focused way, but look at the broader spectrum of where that application could fit. And we can help that because we are looking at a broader aspect of what we're doing. And we can see, well, yes, you're focused here, but with a little bit of more development, it probably would fit really well over here. And this is really a big need. So keep that focus broad.
So as I mentioned earlier in my talk, the small spacecraft landscape is populated heavily by small businesses. And we have leveraged the SBIR program across the nation really to drive technology development in small spacecraft. So this is an easy question to answer. I've got lots of things I could have picked from. The first one, if you recall Jason Durlis' talk, I think it was yesterday or maybe this morning, There's a thruster being developed by Tethers Unlimited in Washington. We're looking to fly that as a tech demo. As I mentioned, the purpose of the program is to get flight heritage. What the program's done is it's went out and bought, I think, 4 or 5 spacecraft buses that are kind of generic, but are designed to carry these different types of technology so we can quickly get the flight heritage. So this is a water-based thruster, very interesting to the community, and we're hopefully going to try to fly that. It was an SBIR, but it may be a flight program, hopefully in the very near future. Another example, Mark just walked in. Another example is it's actually a CRP, a CCRP-P. Sorry, Jen, I mangled it. But it was awarded to MMA, a local company here in Colorado, to build a flexible, modular solar cell power system. Small spacecraft are small, so you can't really get a lot of area on the small spacecraft. You need to have the deployables. So that was selected as a CCRPP, and it is now going to be used by the BioSentinel team to fly out in deep space on the first SLS launch, hopefully in a year or two. And the last one I can mention quickly is another SBIR award for a software-defined radio to InnoFlight, who is, I believe, in San Diego. This very small radio is compatible with a number of different networks, including the Deep Space Network, which is very critical to us because we want to go to the moon and beyond with small spacecraft. We need to be able to track and talk to our spacecraft in deep space. There's a whole bunch more that we can talk about in this area, as I said, because of the way that SBIRs and SmallSat have kind of co-evolved.
Yeah, I have a couple of examples. Actually, I would like to share with you. It's not just SBIR to other programs, like this tipping point, for example. I know that's what I've been focusing on, but actually, a lot of companies have gone back and forth. Maybe have 9 programs. I mean, they have managed to go from one to another one and come back and so on. Anyway, I'll give one good example is Maston Space System. I don't know whether Maston CEO was here yesterday. I don't know whether he's here today. Anyway, just give a shout out to Maston. Basically, like they are a small business operating out of a garage, essentially. Okay, but they're also a flight provider. Okay. They received an SBIR for advanced manufacturing technology for a 25,000-pound Force locksmithing engine, and they also managed to get, based on that, they were able to get a tipping point award to mature that technology. Okay, that's one. As I said, Maston was actually a company that was successful in a Centennial Challenge. That's how, like this Lunar Lander Challenge, they got a prize through, which is basically a Centennial Challenge competition. They got a prize, and then they established a company, and then they are a flight provider under Flight Opportunities Program. Therefore, like they play all the programs that we have together. Okay. Similarly, we have Made in Space. That's another example where they received both an SBIR award as well as a Flight Opportunities Award in 2011, basically to advance their 3D printer for space. And eventually, through help from both the Game Changing Development Program and the Human Exploration Operation Mission Directorate, they were able to take that printer to ISS, the space station, okay? And then we were demonstrated on the station. In addition, they were also able to get a tipping point award to do in-space robotic manufacturing and assembly. I mean, they have played multiple programs within STMD.
Okay. So those are some of the examples. We're going to open up for any questions that people might have regarding any of the programs or any questions that you might have. Yeah. Do we have microphones?
Wait, what's the range?
Could you please repeat that so people can hear?
Go ahead.
What's the weight range for what you consider to be a small sat?
So it's not something that we have written in stone, but we typically talk in terms of spacecraft that can be ride shares with other spacecraft. So the rule of thumb that we have been using is about 180 to 200 kilograms and smaller. And that's set by the limit of how much mass you could put in an ESPA ring. We can talk about that. I'm throwing acronyms out here. That's how much mass you can put on an ESPA ring and still be able to launch. So a couple 100 kilograms and smaller. But it is being discussed. Some people are trying to say, well, it should be larger. And so there's a lot of discussion out there.
Yeah.
To any of you, how did the program get started? Was it a white paper that initiated something that you got interested in?
Can you hear me okay? Or was it a BAA that came from you and then they responded? Any generalization there?
I would tell you the GCD inherits them. So we don't generally drive them, we become custody of them.
I think on this tipping point and the ACO, for example, I mean, those are more based on the higher level needs within STMD and within NASA. And then basically we put out some topics, and then we actually request white papers from you. I mean, it's like a 4 or 5 page white paper from you, which we'll evaluate and then down select from there. And then we will ask you, if selected, you will be providing a final proposal. That's how we operate. I think it's going to be more like a method of operation from now. Basically, we'll have a 2-step process for most of what we do.
So it came from your need, you defined.
Yes. I think we define the need, but also, like as I said in my briefing, we also ask the companies, okay, like for instance, this RFI is essentially asking you to see whether you would like to see something that you're working on, okay, be part of the solicitation, okay. Then what we're going to do is to see whether what you would like to work on and what we have in the need, whether it's a match, then probably we'll end up selecting us as a topic, depending on the priorities.
There are a variety of mechanisms, and it's a little complicated across the board. But I can assure you that all 4 of these people are going to be here for a little while, and you can approach them and talk to them one-on-one about what the intricacies are. Are there any other specific questions? Yeah, we have one over here from our sponsor.
Sorry to take 2 different roles here, but so for companies that are interested there, we heard about some specific solicitations for particular programs that they can keep their eye out for or know that are coming up. But Anthony, can you say just a little bit about GCD, about how companies do get involved and whether that's really kind of a pull from your end, or if there are solicitations and opportunities that they can keep their eye out for?
So we are organized with projects. I have 30 projects in our portfolio, and those projects are managed by project managers. Project manager is the person who drives their technology, and what they will do is they will look at their capability needs, and they will go out to industry where it makes sense for them to go out to industry. They'll go out and they'll solicit collaborations or partnering with industry, and then that will come into the overall portfolio and we'll manage it. NTP has agreements with the Idaho National Lab and BWXT to develop some of their capabilities. Splice has agreements with Draper and some other companies that are commercial companies. So when that capability and that matchup makes sense for these projects, the project managers drive that. The interesting thing I might add is I had industry one-on-ones yesterday afternoon. All day I was at that table, and I will be today again. But at that table, I had many folks that came to me with things that they had, interesting, innovative things that they had envisioned an application for and they had designed it to. But in 2 cases, when they brought it to the table, I could see that what they were looking at wasn't from my needs or our interests in our portfolio, wasn't really a match there, but there was a possibility that it could enable a capability in somewhere else. So I would take that initiative to communicate that, get in touch with the program manager, project manager, express that to them, and then let them make that decision as to whether or not that conversation is something to move forward.
Okay.
And an example of, just real quick, okay, an example of where that works, this is Jen, to build on the NTP example, is there was a company that proposed through CCRPP the last time that is a SBIR company that has, that worked with the NTP project manager to identify a way that the SBIR company matching funding from NTP, that project, could actually develop and deliver a CCRPP that helped to meet that project's needs. But that required the small business to develop the relationship with the project manager so they could see how possibly their work could feed into helping that project manager address their problems. And so in that case, they were able to propose a solution, right, to the CCRPP solicitation, which we'll talk a little bit about later. But there's infinite paths, as we talked about yesterday, to do this. But it's all based on relationship development.
Okay, let me just add to this. I should have mentioned that these two solicitations I talked about, the tipping point and the ACO, actually those two span 4 programs. In fact, the 3 represented here, as well as the technology demonstration mission program. We're talking about the higher TRL programs, basically. For the solicitation, that's what Anthony was saying, that some of the projects actually end up as part of GCD. Some of it would be under small spacecraft, and some under flight opportunity, some under TDM. That's how it is done. And therefore, if you're thinking about some of the topics, please be sure to respond to this RFI.
So I'm going to say one thing. I know we only have about 3 minutes left. We're not trying to be confusing. It is very complicated, but STMD is kind of starting this year with a little bit of a different way of identifying how we're going to invest in things, and it's coming from a top-down, what are the requirements of this administration, and what do we think are the key things that we should be developing with a little more focused investment to enable what the vision is for this administration. And the way that we are approaching that is by bringing our principal technologists, they're referred to as PTs, or our SCLs, which are our system capability leads, but for the purpose of what you guys care about, they're the same kind of interface. We rely on technical experts in the agency in the discipline areas to know what's going on in industry, know what NASA can do, know what our facilities are, and know what the vision is, so that they should be a very good interface for you to talk to say, because if you have something that will leapfrog a bunch of other things that are currently being considered, or if you have an idea that you can't find the right door for and they know it's great, they can help you find the door. And so you can study our 10 or 11 programs and other different themes and other things, or you can find out who the principal technologist is who's responsible for your technology and have a conversation with them. And I'll tell you what, we rely on them for their expertise, their knowledge, and understanding what NASA needs and understanding whether or not what you're saying is valid. And if it is, then they're going to be the ones who are going to find out which program makes sense for you. And so that's what I highly recommend relative to if you just don't have any idea, because materials can support anything. So.
Therese, to build on that, can I ask the PTs that are in the room to stand up? Because we haven't actually introduced you yet. Michelle, I see you there. Come on.
Steve.
So Michelle Monk over here, she's in charge of entry, descent, and landing. John Vickers over here does materials and a bunch of other stuff. It's in the program book. And Steve Horan does avionics and a bunch of other stuff. It's in the program book. But these are 3 of our roughly dozen or so PTs that came specifically to this event that do work cross-program, not just within STMD, but across the agency. And so we didn't point these 3 folks out yesterday, and we should have when we pointed out the MDs. But they're talking this afternoon on the Future NASA Technology Needs panel. But if you work in any of those technology areas, you should try to flag those 3 folks down if you haven't already.
Right.
So for the small sat community, I'm showing the splash page for the Institute, Small Sat Institute, and on that page I track and publish upcoming solicitations from all of NASA, either SMD, HEO, STMD that are applicable to small spacecraft. So we try to push that out so people don't get surprised by it and aware of the upcoming solicitations.
Okay, so it looks like we're out of time. But I appreciate the dialogue, and I hope this was helpful for you. And now that you know what these guys look like and what our PTs who are here look like, hopefully